All right, so we've been battling about Star Wars The Last Jedi for quite some time, almost a year and a half now, which is such a weird thing to say out loud that we've been arguing over a movie for a year and a half about minor details and certain nuances and things that people either like or dislike, and it's really kind of splintered the fandom. But yesterday there was an exchange between a guy on Twitter and Frank Oz about Yoda's motivations in The Last Jedi that have got a lot of people talking. And it all started here with this tweet from a guy named I am Jacob 182 who says, "I'm just glad we all got to experience this moment between Luke and Yoda in The Last Jedi, tagging Ryan Johnson, Mark Hamill, and Frank Oz." To which case it was responded to by a guy named Bill Blazkowski that says, "Luke wanting to burn the tree, then being pissed after Yoda does it 2 seconds later. Luke getting hit with a ghost cane. Yoda laughing and kicking his legs in maniacal joy as he lightning torches a force tree. What the fuck? Complete and total mess." To which case I am Jacob responds, "So you mean to tell me this is out of character when Yoda did the same thing back in ESB when he first met Luke?" Bill responds, "You never picked up on that Yoda was trying to fool Luke in ESB. He was acting crazy and like a pest, and he didn't want Luke knowing who he was just yet. So yeah, in TLJ, he was out of character by burning the Force tree especially." Which, look, to be fair, that's some interesting conversation there. It's like, looking at the scene where Hamill goes to burn the tree and Yoda shows up, gives him a little bit of crap, then he uses Force Lightning to destroy the tree, was an interesting scene. It felt a little bit off, but it never really struck me as anything that was particularly bad. There was a lot more bad in the movie involving Luke Skywalker's character that we can all kind of point to, but I think in essence it does kind of pull into an underlying theme that the Force is far more powerful than any of us have ever fully experienced. I mean, if you just look at the concept there of Yoda with a ghost cane being able to hit Mark Hamill with it, right? And we saw that when there was the Force projection between Rey and Kylo, and they're having conversations to the point of where he sees water on his hands, or they're able to almost manifest themselves to touch very briefly before they get interrupted. And then, of course, the Force doppelganger scene where Mark Hamill somehow transports himself halfway across the galaxy, knowing exactly the right location, and looking like he did apparently in Return of the Jedi. I don't know. He just looked terrible in that scene with the dyed hair. It should have been an actual projection, not how he wished he looked 20 years ago, I guess. I don't know. It was very kind of dumb. But that was an element that Ryan Johnson was going for the majority of the film, was like the Force does mysterious things, right? And but Frank Oz actually chimed in on that conversation. And he says here, "I have a pretty intimate knowledge of who Yoda is, and I don't feel it was out of character at all." And that got a lot of people really going like, "Oh, damn. Oh, snap. Frank Oz comes and chimes in." And you know what, though? The more I think about it, he's kind of right. He is kind of right. Like, I would argue that with what Yoda did in that moment in time, ultimately is in character with Yoda. Right, because the thing that Bill here didn't mention, the thing that he probably should have mentioned, at least for his criticism, is what was in the tree. Well, the tree contained the text. It contained the old books. Luke was going to burn all of it to end the Jedi. He was looking to just wipe it out from existence. He was being selfish, and that was him doing that thing, right? That was him, I guess, at rock bottom, so to speak. That's meant to be the rock bottom moment and for his character arc in the film. If anyone was going to hit rock bottom in that movie, it was Luke Skywalker at that moment. Fine. And then Yoda shows up to kind of school him one more time by, burning the tree for him, taking away that particular choice that he was going to make, because Yoda had already known that Rey had taken the books and put them on the Millennium Falcon. He knew that there was nothing in that tree, and that tree was ultimately symbolic and could be destroyed because it wasn't going to contain within it the knowledge anymore that Luke Skywalker was ultimately trying to destroy. And I know that's kind of in part with some of the subverting of expectations that Ryan Johnson was flirting with in The Last Jedi. And it's one of the only ones I feel remotely even works, because looking at the concept of what it was he was trying to portray from Luke Skywalker's character, it makes sense in that moment. The other actions that he does in regards to killing him doesn't make any sense, right? So here's the thing too with that. And I'd like you guys to kind of like take this particular criticism one step further, at least in regards to how poorly Ryan Johnson handled the ending of the movie. If you go back and you watch it again, as soon as Luke rematerializes, or we cut to Luke on Octo 2 looking at the twin suns, you can see that he's kind of holding his side. He's holding his side. And that ultimately, and I saw this the very first time I saw the movie, he's holding his side because I think that is where Kylo's lightsaber struck him during the fight. Because remember, it's all about manifestation, right? That the Force is able, through midichlorians, to manifest itself in the physical reality. So Yoda being able to use a ghost cane to hit Luke. Kylo and Rey being able to touch and almost manifest themselves across the galaxy in real time while being apart. That was meant to manifest physicality within the Force. And then, of course, that would have been the third thing that would have then been able to run in the rule of three that tends to work, in Hollywood and stories. It's always the rule of three. Rian Johnson failed on that front exceptionally. But in the moment with Yoda, in for what they were trying to do, and for the final lesson Yoda was trying to teach, he was messing with Mark Hamill. He was messing with Luke Skywalker. And he had already known exactly where the books, where the texts were, knowing that it wouldn't matter if Mark burned the tree. He wouldn't give into it. He was, in my opinion, he was trying to prevent Luke from giving into hate, giving into that part of the dark side, to reopening up himself to the Force, to then giving back into being a Jedi, which is the ultimate effect of that particular scene. That's how I view it. So I don't view what Yoda did in that movie as being out of character. I view it as being very much in character. I agree wholeheartedly with Frank Oz here. Everything else involving Luke Skywalker was not very good. Especially the scene where he was training Rey on the cliffside, and he's using a reed to like slap her hand, tickle her hand, and slap her hand. Like, is that the Force? Is that the Force? Like I feel that was so dumb. But everything else involving him was bad. That scene I thought was actually really good, considering that it was the original ESB puppet of Yoda and it was Frank Oz voicing it. The inner Star Wars nerd in me was like, oh, that was a good scene that really, really, really got me. As much as I dislike The Last Jedi, I can argue that there are a few good moments in the movie, surrounded by a lot of mediocre and some outright bad. But anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts and my opinions on this one. Frank Oz is right about Yoda, and I think that a lot of people are just overlooking some of the smaller, more minute details that do play into the larger theme that aren't as terrible as some of the things that were so blatantly put on screen that were bad, that has caused us to still fight over this movie nearly a year and a half later. Anyway, I leave it to you, your thoughts right in below.